Hi everybody, Levi Clay here, and yes, as you saw from the intro and probably from the title, we're going to be looking at some jazz today. Jazz coming from one of the best, one of the greatest, one of my all-time favourites, Mr. Joe Pass. And what we're going to be looking at more specifically today is how Joe Pass approaches improvising over simple tunes, early swing tunes. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the tune Satin, but we will come on to that. So for those unfamiliar, Joe Pass, an absolutely fabulous fingerstyle and solo guitar player, but also had a great career playing in band settings. Had his own trio that he played with often, well known for playing with Ella Fitzgerald. The list goes on and on. Absolutely one of the all-time greats, and we're doing a bit of Joe Pass month on Patreon this month. So I'm doing a bit of a feature talking about some Joe. And yeah, if you want to actually, this coming Friday, which is a few days from now, I'll be doing a live stream transcribing some more Joe Pass. So if you enjoy this, tune into that live stream. I think it's 10 p.m. UK time, and you will get even more Joe Pass goodness. So anyway, onto the tune. So this is the song Satin Doll, the old Duke Ellington standard, and the performance that I'm taking this from is from Joe Pass's Evening with Joe Pass DVD, which was filmed at GIT many years ago. So yeah, that's well worth checking out. It's on YouTube. In fact, I'll cut in the solo now. It sounds like this. The reason I'm looking at this tune in particular is there are quite a few chord changes in it, but the harmony isn't anything spectacular. It's nothing to write home about. I'll tell you what, I will give you the chords, then we'll deal with the melody, and then we'll talk about function and things like that. So it's a lot of repeating 2/5s. It's a D minor 7 to a G7. Then you play the same thing but a tone higher, so that would be again a 2/5 in the key of D, which would be E minor 7 going to A7. And that's at quite some pace. That's 2 beats on each chord. 1, 2, a 1, 2, a 1, 2, a 1, 2. We then have another 2/5, A minor 7 to D7. Then another 2/5, A flat minor 7 to D flat 7. And then there's a turnaround played, which is a C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, and then ending on an A7 chord. So there's a lot of chord changes there, and as I say, the melody is actually very important. This is an early swing tune, so this is about the song, not about the solo. This is about the melody. So very, very familiar. Ba 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 da ba 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 do ba da do da 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 do do da da do da da do ba da da do. Yeah, so Satin Doll, well worth checking out because, as I say, it's all about melody. And because of that, as I said in the start, the changes to this aren't crazy. Sure, there are a lot of chords, but it's a lot of 2/5 chord progressions. And that can be tricky to deal with. So I thought the best way to look at how to deal with something like that would be to look at, one of the masters. Joe Pass, big fan of this early Duke Ellington era of playing, of songs and vocabulary, and so you should be. It's, pre-bebop and therefore pro-music, let's go, pro-song. So as I say, it's a lot of 2/5s. D minor 7, G7. And what are you going to play over that? Because It is a 2/5, yeah, I'll give you that, but it's not a functioning 5 chord. That G7 isn't going where you would expect it to. It doesn't go back to the C chord. So you can't be playing altered licks. You can't be going... Stuff like that isn't going to work on this because that 5 chord isn't going anywhere. So I thought the best way to deal with this would be to do exactly what Joe does and try and get inside his mindset and tell you how he's thinking, or at least how I perceive him to be thinking. I did the intro performance with a pick, but of course Joe's a fingerstyle player, so I'll do this all now fingerstyle. It should be fine either way. Yeah, so basically when we're looking at a 2/5 progression, or at least when Joe's looking at a 2/5 progression, he's not necessarily thinking of each individual chord, or at least it doesn't seem that he is to me. It seems a little bit more key center approach, a little bit more melody driven. So the phrase that he plays over the first 2/5 is this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Simple melody. So what is that? Well, I mean, to me it looks kind of like an F major 7 arpeggio, 10, 10 on the G and B, 8 and 12 on the high E, jumping up to 15 on the high E string, and then doing this 11 to 12, E flat to E on the high E string. Now what that says to me is he must be thinking of a C major chord. He must be, because this is, if you were thinking C, this would be your flat third to your third. That's your bluesy vocabulary, right? So things like that. So it's a good strong melody. Rather than having to think to ourselves D minor and then G, it's too much to think about. If we think just strong melodies, melodies like that sound like a key center. They sound good, they sound strong. So I think they work really well in this setting where it's not necessarily about showing off, it's about playing something memorable. So after that first melody, we then come down this. So again, I'm kind of seeing this as being like a C sus sound. 8 and 8 on the high E and B, and then 10 and 10 on the G and D. He plays this little trill, or ornamentation we should say. 8, 9, 8, 7, 10 on the D. Now again, this all kind of fits in my mind, and Joe's very much a caged player, so around this C form at the 8th fret, all of this vocabulary all fits very nicely around that caged form. So all looks like C to me. But then the problem comes in because the next two bars cover E minor 7 and A7. Now A7, E minor 7 actually is in the key of C. It does belong in the key of C. It's chord 3 in the key of C. But A7 is very much not in the key of C. So if you look at this E minor 7 and say, well, this is the 3 chord in the key of C, you can kind of get by with that, and then you got going to the A7 secondary jump, but I would prefer to look at it myself as a shifting key. It's moving to the key of D. It's the 2 chord in the key of D and the 5 chord in the key of D. It's really kind of important that you deal with it in that respect, in my mind at least, because that A7 chord has the note C sharp in it, and if you're thinking of everything in relation to the key of C, well, you're certainly not going to be playing lots of C sharps. So, and well, clearly Joe does the same thing, because the melody he plays after playing is this. Now what is that? 7 on the G, 9 on the D, 10 on the A, and then 7 on the A. That's very clearly an E minor 7 arpeggio, right? So we've been playing C, very obvious C vocabulary. And as soon as that E minor 7 chord lands, he's playing E minor 7 vocabulary. Then he plays a nice little trill idea, and this actually fits okay in the key of C or in the key of G, or D. Lots of ways you could think of this. It works because it's a motif. That's 10, 12 on the B, and then 11 on the G. And that just moves down, starting on the 8th fret. It's a nice little melody. And then we come down an A7 arpeggio. And this is leading us to the note F sharp. We'll come to that in a second. So what do I play there? 5 on the B, 6 on the G, 7 on the D, and then we're coming down chromatically. Now, be under no mistake, that is an A7 arpeggio coming out, again, of that E shape of the cage system. Now, for this section of 2 5s, A minor 7 to D7, what I find works best is to treat the A minor 7 to D7 just as a D7 chord. Ignore that 2 chord and just pretend it's a 5 chord, so it's a D7 chord. Play lots of stuff around a D chord, right? Let's take a look at what Joe plays, and this will kind of make some sense to you. So as I say, after playing this A7 chord, we land on the F sharp note. And from that F sharp, we're then walking up. Just walking up that arpeggio. It's really a D7 arpeggio. D9 even. We're hitting 4 on the D string, 4, 7, and then 5 and 5 on the G and B, 8 on the B, and then we're shifting 7 and 10 on the high E. And then there's a nice little turnaround. Now, you don't need to analyse that in too much depth. I've tried to do it myself, and it's not really coming from anything other than borrowing that idea of playing notes a semitone below notes that sound great. That's a bebop phrase that, you know, you do. As a bop player, you're just expected to know good vocabulary like that. That just kind of makes sense, right? So you get to that top 7 and 10, then you hit 8 on the E, 9 on the B, and then 7, 10, and 9 on descending strings E, B, and G. So that's all, in my mind, D7. Now, for the next phrase, Joe plays something that I don't actually think works wonderfully. It's passable, but it's certainly not what I would imagine to play. I find that, again, because you've got this modulating 2-5 thing, now we'd have an A flat minor 7 to a D flat 7. Or again, if we just think of the D flat 7 and think about where the chord is going, after this it goes to a C major 7. And what that tells me is that this D flat 7 is really functioning as a tritone substitution for a G7 chord. So over that, instead of A flat minor 7 and D flat 7, I'm actually just thinking G7 here, and that would allow me to play some altered vocabulary, which Joe absolutely does. You know, after playing, you can easily move into this land of play something a little bit altered there, and it brings you home. But you know, altered vocabulary is a subject for another day. What he plays is this. And again, this is the same basic thing as we did here. It's a motif, which is just 2 notes. 8 and 9 on the G and B. And then moving that down in tones. When you do that, I mean, it's not actually whole tone, but it gives that, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, symmetrical. Yeah, symmetrical would be the best way of describing it. If I put it in context, after going... It's just a simple little phrase that takes us away, gives us that outside sound, before resolving back to that turnaround. And as I mentioned, you know, the actual changes, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7 to A7. Joe actually, for the most part, always treats this like it's blues. He'll play, well, the first phrase he literally plays is... So what have we got going on there? Well, this is really kind of G-shape caged. And it's the C country scale, or you could think of it as being the A blues scale. 5 on the D string, and then 5, 7, 8 on the G. Chromatically up from 5 to 8 on the B. All very much sounds like a C chord. Now from that point, all of these notes, 8 on the B, 5 on the high E, 6 on the B, and 8 on the B again. These are all still C, but and then you just have that turnaround right at the end where you hit that A7 chord, which takes you back to the start of the progression. And from there, what does he play? Have a guess. Just the notes of that A7 arpeggio. And it helps to give you the sound of the chord progression. So we have... entire progression begins again. So what does he play this time around? Well, there's a few more chords this time, which is cool. But the same basic principle is clearly true. Over the D minor 7 to G7, he plays D minor. So what is that? Well, it's an F major 7 arpeggio. 8, 7, 5 and 5. C shape of the cage system. And when you play that over a D minor, that gives you what we call a 3 to 9 arpeggio. You're playing the 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th. And then we have the octaves. So that's an octave starting little finger on the 12th fret of the high E string. Moves up chromatically. Which, I mean, actually, when I look at it, kind of looks like a C major to me. Totally sounds and looks like a C on reflection. But yeah, as a phrase, again, over D minor to G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice little phrase. And then we switch perspectives again. Now he definitely thinks E minor here. You can tell from what he plays. Nice little phrase, chord melody type thing. Very Joe. He plays. That's the only point where I'd kind of think of that as being an A7 chord. But yeah, so what have we got there? Well, this is an E minor 7 arpeggio chord. A shape of the cage system. 7, 9, 7, 8 and 10. Shifts down and plays 5, 7, 7 and 7. Now you could look at this and you could say this is a G major 7 chord, but if we put that E in the bass, It's an E minor 9 chord. And then we have 2, 4, 2, and 2. Sorry, 2, 4, 3, and 3 on the top 4 strings again. This is a straight E minor 7 chord. D shape of the cage system. Then we have a triad, 5, 4, and 5 on the D, G, and B strings. This is an E minor, as I say. And then we just lower that top note from an E down to a C sharp. And when you do that, this sounds to me like an A9 chord. Caged again, G shape of the cage system. When I play this. Sounds like those chord changes to some degree. Cool, what does he play next? Well, he does this, he goes. So what is that? Well, again, it's the same basic principle. We have an E minor 7 going to an A7, right? Well, this, that's an A7, sharp 9, sharp 5. So it's tension, which we want to resolve to that chord change. A minor 7 to D7 or just D7, you have that resolution, and it's really quite pleasing after playing it's taking us to that D chord, which is nice. And actually from here it's very easy. He plays the D, pauses for 2 beats, and then just plays the guide tones, the 4th fret and the 5th fret on the D and G strings. Then the chord changes again, right? And as I said to you, it's easiest to think of the next chords instead of A flat minor 7 to D flat 7. If you think of it as just G7, Joe plays this. It's the same voicing we played up here, but 2 frets lower. So G7, sharp 5, sharp 9, 3, 4, 4, and 6. Again, then plays the double stop guide tones, 7th and 3rd. Because that gives us that vibe of G7. And then we need to come home, we need to come to C. And well, I heard there was a secret chord, David played and pleased the Lord, blah, blah, blah. It goes like this, the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall, the major lift. I'm telling you it's in reference to this. This is the minor 7th of our chord, this is the major 3rd of our chord, the minor 7th falls, and the major 3rd lifts. So we go from, it's a 5-1 cadence, it's a perfect cadence. It is our resolution, it is us going home, if you like. So let me play it, what we've got from the chord melody bit. So sounds like you come home at that point, right? Yeah, nice and easy. And then finally just a blues phrase to end with. So again, caged C shape, and he plays this. So what's that? Hit the root note C on the G string. Then we got these double stops. 8, root note on the high E string. And then we're playing 6 on the B, 7, 8, and then 6. Then we come down 8 and 5 on the G, 8 and 5 on the D, 8 on the A, and then we hit 6 to 7 on the A. That's taking us back to the 3rd of C, and then ending on the root note, G, on the 5th fret of the G string. Not G, yeah, C on the 5th fret of the G string. Man, communicating for guitar is hard work. Okay, so let me play everything we've got there. I'll do it nice and slowly for you, and then we'll cut in the original video of me doing it. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. nice, pleasing, very enjoyable. So I'm going to cut in the original clip for you now. Check it out. Yeah, and then go check out some Joe Pass because, as I say, he's one of the masters. He will really twist your ear for that jazz thing. Certainly was a big influence on me growing up. And if you do enjoy it, check the links out on page. You can subscribe by clicking one of the buttons. Check me out on Patreon by clicking one of the buttons, and you'll find 2 more of my videos by clicking the other 2 buttons. Much love, guys, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.